All right. We are here today with Mr. Eric Bramlett, the owner of Bramlett Residential. How are you, man?
I'm great, Lee. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing great. Doing great. Excited to dig in here. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your business and your company, and then I want to dive deep on some of the tools you use.
Yeah, absolutely. So we founded Bramlett Residential 10 years ago, actually, this month. And it's been a kind of a slow growth company to this point. We're ramping up growth as of a couple of months ago. We finished the year last year with 28 agents. We did 324 million in sales. We are up to 35 agents now. We rolled into the year with 50 million already on the books. We did just a little under 40 last month. So we're at little over 90 million for the year right now. Projected this year is going to be somewhere around 450 to 500 million, just depending on how things shake out. So
that's awesome. Love that. Yeah. And I love that you use the term slow growth, because that is such an important part of it. Like everybody wants the magic button or the easy button, but the reality of it is it is iterative and it takes time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we spent all of last year really solidifying systems for growth. We had a lot of what we call tribal knowledge, meaning that, agents in the office knew how to do things, but it wasn't incredibly well documented. So, we spent a lot of time documenting it. And then really our onboarding process was probably the worst documented. So that was a really big effort as we took on more agents, really improved that. And now we're at a point where we're interviewing a couple of agents a week. We hire usually about half of the agents that we interview, not because that's a goal or anything. That's just kind of how it shakes out.
Yeah.
And we're excited. We have an offer out to a new sales manager. We have a managing broker who came on board last year, and we're ready to sort of take on the world this year. So
that's great. I love to hear that. And I think, it's tough because a lot of times in this business, we are kind of getting ready to get ready. Right. But we also have to be ready. Like, you can't just have 10 agents sign on and go, oh shoot, what are we going to do?
Exactly.
Especially if you are, if it all hinges on one person, which I know for you, it doesn't necessarily, but if you're not leveraging other people, if you're out of town, then it's not moving forward,
Yes. So it's really important to know what you're good at, and it's really important to know what you're not good at. And so the hire we made last year, Lauren, who's amazing, really filled in all of my weaknesses, which I'm an okay manager. I'm much happier, in the background, putting together systems, working on things like that. I'm a really bad motivator, and Lauren's a fantastic motivator. She's a really great manager. And then, the new role that we're hiring for now that we have somebody who we've made an offer to, or we're making an offer to, that role is really more of a coaching role, which I can be a coach, but in keeping with, I'm not a great motivator. I also am not a great coach. I can tell people when they're not doing things correctly, but my delivery is really off. So that's where hopefully this person will come in and help things improve considerably. So
that's awesome. I love that. But, again, and kind of growing to that, like, you've got expectations set, which is the first step, right? It's like, agent, we expect you to do this. Right. You've got tools with which to measure it, or have checklists, or all of the above. Are these things done? Where are we in the process? And then you kind of rinse and repeat that, right? Like, that's the part that grows over time, or you get better at, or the agent doesn't need as much handholding. Yeah. I'm excited to see what that does for you guys, for sure. Cause you're really in a good spot to pour some gas on the fire,
Thank you. Yeah. So it sounds crazy to say it, but we said our 5-year goal is to hit $1 billion in sales. I really think we're going to be able to do it a lot sooner than 5 years. So sounds crazy to say that out loud, but that is a realistic goal for us. So
but you've got the trajectory. You literally, it's not crazy. Like,
thank you.
I like it. In fact, I think the numbers went up since last time we talked, which was like a couple of weeks ago, which is awesome. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, the year's starting off pretty strong, and we're at 60% year over year growth. So, 324 million. You tack on 60% more of that, and you get a lot closer to $500 million than you do 450. So
right, that's exactly right. I love that. So let's start at the beginning. Like, what is a system? Like, just first and foremost, like, we're talking about systems and software. What's a system?
Yeah, I mean, a system is just replicable tasks, right? You're doing that. You know that doing things a certain way gets you a certain result, and so you formalize that. You say, okay, well, this is exactly how we do this one thing every time. And we know that if we do this one thing every time, that we're going to get this result. And so that's really what a system is.
Yeah, that's great. And then therefore, by definition, it's kind of designed to be a checklist or go into a software tool, or like it is, because it's replicable. It needs to live somewhere,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, and sometimes it is software. Sometimes it is, it's a process that a human follows. Right. And sometimes you take a process that a human follows and you build it into, you build it into an app, you build it into software. It's really just all about saving time. Like, is it too much work to turn this into software, or are we going to save a lot of time and gain efficiencies by having, or sometimes reliability by having software do it? We have a lot of both, right? We have a lot of apps that we built. We use a lot of apps that are already out there, and then we have a ton of processes that our VAs do for us. So auditing processes, things like that, marketing processes, things like that. So those all live in documentation, basically. So.
That's great. I love that. I mean, I don't think enough people talk about that. It really is the blend of people and software. Like, we can't just we can't just $29.99 ourselves into systems,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the software requires correct setup, right? I mean, you and I are both heavy Follow-Up Boss users, and, you can't just get a Follow-Up Boss subscription, set everybody's, hey, here's your accounts, and then all of a sudden it's going to work. Right. So we have a process that we require our agents use inside of Follow-Up Boss, right? And then through Follow-Up Boss's tools, that gives us insight into, are these processes being followed? It requires all of that. You have to have the processes that are expected to be followed, and then you have to have some accountability if you want people to actually follow them. So
right, exactly. And accountability in particular, in my opinion, and I know the way you have it set up, is, again, you're hiring a sales manager. It's a blend of people and tools with which to say, oh, look, you're trending down. What's going on? Can we help you? Do you need some training? Are we not giving you enough leads? Like, troubleshoot that.
Absolutely.
But you need a human to do that,
Yeah, you do. I mean, there is some stuff. So you always start with, like, the person in charge looking at it and coming up with their own processes. And then you say, okay, what are you doing that's taking you a lot of time that shouldn't, right? So, to give you an example, the accountability itself, like, a sales manager and a smart sales manager can sit down and, 2 or 3 hours a day, go audit every single, agent's communication. Probably not the best use of their time. Great for them to sort of spot check. But then, where this is leading towards is we already have a call auditing system in place where we have one of our marketing assistants, who's a VA, listens to every single call, right? And then she says, oh, hey, this looks like it might be a problem call, or maybe the agent didn't put it into Follow-Up Boss, things like that, just accountability, right? And it's much better to have that assistant do the grunt work, and then it frees up the sales manager's time to actually give, to coach, to really do what's high value. So
yeah, that's great. I love that. And to your point about Follow-Up Boss, it is super powerful tool, but you have to come up with an overall strategy. You have to implement those things, and you have to keep an eye on, is this still work? Are we outgrowing this? Does it work? Are people using it? All of those things. And I also would argue, and I think Follow-Up Boss would say the same, there are still things it's not designed to do. It is not designed to take all the details of, like, a contract through, it's just not. Like, they've got deals for measuring, for kind of keeping track of things, or conversion, like this lead became a contract signed.
Right.
But, it's really just not designed to be a deep checklist for things like onboarding or contract to close, or any of the things. And I know for a fact, they say internally, like, we want to be a best in class CRM. Like, we're not trying to do all those things.
No, that's what's fantastic about them is they, I've been a Follow-Up Boss user since 2012. Like, they basically launched in either late 11 or 12 or whatnot. And I just kind of found them accidentally, and it was a great partnership. It's been an amazing partnership. And I talked to them years ago about, why don't you guys create CDAs, right? Because if you do that, then, it's just one less system other people have to use. They have zero interest in it. And it's because they're really good at saying, this is our core competency. We're a really fantastic CRM. And it's not just about building the features, it's also about supporting them. And then and then you sort of like, so if you branch out and say, okay, we're also going to be a transaction management platform, I mean, you just open up a can of worms that's going to distract you from what you're really, really great at. And I would hate it if those guys got distracted from being literally the best real estate CRM in the business. It's phenomenal.
Right. And being open integration with pretty much any other tool that will have it. So
right, exactly.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So as far as some of those other processes, and if you want to share your screen and show stuff, that's awesome. We can definitely do that. As far as kind of those other processes, is that all in Real Scale, or do you have is your onboarding process in there as well, or is that somewhere else, or where does the non-follow up boss stuff all live?
It all lives in that's all in Real Scale, right? So whenever it is a good goal to use as few tools as you possibly can, right? So the more tools you bolt on, the more work you're gonna create for yourself and making sure that they're all compatible. So we literally, in terms of running the business, we use Follow Up Boss and we use Real Scale, and we don't use anything else. So yeah, that's the answer, I guess.
That's great. No, yeah. I love that. And you can obviously then assign specific tasks or specific templates, right? To, if somebody's onboarding, then, hey, this is who does that, or this is, and then you can see at a high level, is this done, or what phase of onboarding is this person now in,
For sure. I can, if you'd like for me to, I can screen share some stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome.
That'd be great.
So I'm going to share this desktop and drag this over here.
Cool. That's perfect.
Awesome. Hold on. Let me get the screen sized correctly. So this is the dashboard, and what the system does, it does a few things really well. So, the main thing it does for us is it creates CDAs, right? So commission disbursement authorizations, and most brokerages use those. If you're a brokerage not using CDAs, I mean, there's the hugest inefficiency you can blast out of the water tomorrow just by using a CDA system. And you can use Real Scale, or you can use SkySlope, or you can use Brokerman or whatever, but that's a huge efficiency gain. Yeah. What that does, so it's by its nature, anytime you're creating CDAs, you also have to marry compliance to it, because the agents are uploading all their documents and they're entering all their transactions. Right. So it's redundant, right? It's reliable. That the data is good because it's all been audited. What that does for you after you've had, call it a few months or a year or whatnot of entering this data in a reliable way, is it gives you reliable sales numbers. So whenever we go to the dashboard, it's going to show us what our sales volume looks like, for the previous 90, for the previous 30. This one's fantastic. For the next 30, it's going to show you what you have, what your income pipeline looks like. And then your net income that's coming into the brokerage, it's going to show you what that looks like as well. And then you're going to see it always goes down the month after, because most contracts are entered for the upcoming month. And it's always going to go up after that, because the agents are always going to have some contracts that are new builds that are, that are further out. It gives you really good insight into your brokerage. And if you're planning on making hires, if you're planning on maybe opening an office or something like that, okay, we can afford this, or maybe you can't, right? But it's going to guide you. And then you're going to have a leaderboard that's going to show you how you're doing. And that's why, Lee, whenever I said earlier, I know that we're 60% up. Well, it's because you can look at what your YTD contracted and closed is versus the previous years, and you can see what your listing pipeline looks like, things like that. Right. And then you have a leaderboard for the agents. Agents are naturally very competitive, and they love it. And it really does an awesome job of, showing the agents what, where they are. Right. So the reporting is really great. And I won't get too in the weeds on the reporting, but it's something people ask about all the time, right? They say, oh, I'm going to use other systems that are just reporting systems and whatnot. And they try to sync up their CDA system with that. And it's not a bad move by any means if you can make it work, but it's tough, right? And if you have one that's all just in one system, then it works.
Well, to be a lot more granular, I mean, we've all got different MLS fee models, or does it come off the gross or it come off the net number? It can be pretty complicated. So having a single point of truth makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that, showing you what your brokerage net is, showing you what your income you have of fees. And then what's really important that some brokers, I think, ignore is what your agent net looks like. That's a really good indicator of agent happiness, right?
It's a good way to keep people.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have 100 agents and nobody's making any money, you probably have a problem, right? if you have a bunch of agents and the majority of them are doing well, then, you know, you have a pretty happy place, and you probably have a pretty solid business at that point.
And again, as a sales manager, that's data to say like, oh, hey, I need to talk to this guy. Like, he's down 20%. Is he
and you can look at it from their perspective rather than going in and just saying like, hey guys, you're not closing anything. What's the problem? Right. You can go talk to them and say, look, you personally did not earn a whole lot of money last year. Like we need to fix this, like, collaboratively. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to, you know, pound on you and say, oh, the company's not making any money. It's like, hey, listen, guy, like, let's figure out how you can earn some more money. You end up with a lot of good historical graphs. So it shows you kind of how you're doing monthly. It shows you how you're doing, you know, year to date, things like that. And you can see, for me, like, I'm super happy right here. Like, the brokerage is making more money. This is all contracts, right? But gosh, man, our agents have almost doubled their income year to date. So that's pretty phenomenal.
Awesome.
Again, I don't want to get too in the weeds on it, but the reporting stuff is great. And it all starts with just, okay, this is where you have to get your CDAs. Because they have to get their CDAs there, the information is reliable. Since the information is reliable, then you know that you can rely on the reports. Oh, this is pretty cool too. This will be a plug for Follow Up Boss, but Follow Up Boss has some good reporting as well, and their deals feature is pretty cool. But the problem with deals is that you're asking your agents to enter stuff,
right? And
there's no real incentive. It's just, you have to go enter this stuff. It's not, oh, you're doing this in order to get a CDA or whatever it is. So we just zip the info back over to them. And then all of a sudden your deals pipeline becomes reliable as well. And you can see what you have there. Since that information is reliable, now you have deal reporting that's also very reliable in Follow Up Boss. So if you don't want to go back and forth between systems a lot, you can just go over here and it all looks really great.
Right.
What we did, so we used to use 3 systems, right? We used to use Follow Up Boss, RealScale, and Basecamp for transaction management. Right. And Basecamp we use as the task list. So it's you will have the same processes that you do over and over whenever you're doing transaction coordination. It's just a fact, right? I mean, the transactions they vary slightly, but they don't vary just a ton, right?
Right.
And I'll show you what a seller TC looks like real quick. So hopefully, I didn't look at this one first, so hopefully it is a good, hopefully it is a good example. So if you go over here to tasks, this is all the TCs, they come in, and this is where all of their tasks live, right? So you can see there were listing agent tasks that have been completed, and there's listing coordination launch and blah, blah, blah. And again, don't want to get into the weeds on this, but you can see there's a lot of stuff that happens here.
Right.
And, whenever you need to know that it's being done, you can see who it's assigned to and when it's due and if they've done it or not.
Right.
The TCs themselves, where they live is they go into my tasks.
Right.
I'll show you, like, this guy, Steven, he will probably have a ton of stuff he needs to do. So this is everything that he has to do today, right? But once he finishes today, if he wants to get ahead of his work, like, what does he need to do tomorrow? Things like that. And this is where he can keep everything. This is where he can keep everything organized. So the system itself, it allows people to be highly organized and also highly accountable. There's a lot of other stuff in here that it does, like email templating, things like that. It fires based on real estate specific milestones, like list date, under contract date, inspection date, things like that. It's been thought through pretty well. Again, don't want to really go into the weeds on it too much, and I'll just go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. But the most important thing is, number one, like, if you don't have your checklist built yet, don't even think about what system you're going to use. That's not even worthwhile, right? We have a saying around the office that if you eat a burger, you don't shove the whole thing in your mouth, you eat it in bites, right? So if you know that you need to build systems, and you don't have the actual task list, get on Microsoft Word or Google Drive or whatever, and build your checklist first.
Right.
That's hard. That's going to take you more time than probably anything.
Right.
It doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to be a 90% is an A, right? 100% certainly an A too, but a 90% is also an A. So just give yourself an A, get it 90% done. Then think about what system you're going to use to plug it in, so that you don't have to launch you don't have to go print off your Microsoft Word document every time and physically hand it to somebody. Figure out what you want to use. And again, find one that is 90% good, right? Find one that's going to do. That's actually how we landed with Follow Up Boss in 2012. I got in the business in 2003 and probably really got serious about real estate. Actually, it was in 2008 whenever the market crashed. And I was like, man, I'm going to lose my house if I don't get serious about this. But anyways, we started looking around for CRM. We bounced to all these different CRM. And none of them were perfect. And so I kept trashing them. And just by luck, I found Follow Up Boss at the same time that I came to the realization that nothing is going to be perfect and we need to use something good. And at the time, Follow Up Boss did 90% of what we needed. I was like, okay, great. We're just going to use it. Now it does, call it 99% of what we need. But whenever you're looking for these systems, and not to go off on a huge tangent here, but your goal should not be perfection. Your goal should be 90% and then execute on it. So
yeah, I love that you said that way, because something I often have to be really diplomatic and careful saying this, but people should, unless you're going to build the software, right, it's much smarter to take the software and use it for what it does, instead of say all the things that you think that you want it or need it to do.
For sure.
Now, that's not to say that all the software in the world is perfect and you have to do only what it does and never ask for feature improvements or whatever. But I think too many people kind of buy software based on little bullets. Oh, it can do this. It can do this. Okay, great. And then just wish it did other things versus using it for what it does, or trying to fill in gaps with paper or a human or whatever that is.
You should use software as it's intended. Whenever you kind of go off label on software, it's not always going to be supported. So you could build processes, and if you're using it in a way that they didn't intend it, then that could all go away. They could say, oh, we're not going to support this anymore. Or, you're going to come up with a big wish list of like, oh man, I wish you guys would, feature improve this or whatnot. And they're just never going to do it. I mean, because they're using it off label. But kind of to go back to it, I mean, whenever you find something that you're like, yeah, this is going to work, right? Based on the processes that I've already built, this, my Google Word document that I created, and this is everything we do. This is going to work for me. And you kind of plug into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
And fire, right? Like that's the thing. Like you've got to execute. Like if you look at it and you go, the only way I'm going to eat this burger is by shoving the entire thing in my mouth. Like you're going to be hungry because you're never going to do it, right? But if you say, okay, you chop it up into little pieces. Okay, great. Like I don't have any formal transaction coordination processes. Couple of options. Like, do we go just hire a TC that already has the processes built? That's going to be 90% good. Or get started and start documenting them.
I think something that's interesting about real estate is that as much as most people who are active in real estate aren't really details or systems people necessarily naturally, they do tend to have a process that works for them. Most of these people it may seem like they wing it, but they don't totally wing it. They don't just show up. It may be just more in their brain.
Right.
But the idea that when you go to a listing appointment, like you probably take some sort of CMA, maybe you send something in advance, maybe you send an advance like, hey, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, just to confirm or remind. Like people have a lot of these systems, they just don't always have them in a way that is scalable or certainly not usable for other people.
Absolutely.
And if you're going to grow a team or a brokerage, like that's what people are joining you for. That's what they're paying their split to you for, right? Is for some of those systems and the marketing, and because they don't want to go figure out a CRM. They don't want to figure out a checklist. They just want to sell real estate.
Exactly. No, they want to follow up. They want to be, the market expert, which they are, and they want to help people into a house, right? Or to sell the house. Yeah. You mentioned email, and that's a phenomenal way to start with your systems. That's how we started. Was I realized like, oh my gosh, I'm sending the same emails over and over. Let's document these. And I literally put them into a Google Drive document at the time, and we just go copy and paste over. Not very, that's not a very tech savvy way to do it, but it works. And it is a huge jump versus like retyping the same email every single time. And like look, if you predominantly do seller business, look at what you're doing every single time and save some email templates. And what you're going to find is that, oh, I'm sending these emails at specific periods of time. So, we always send, as soon as we talk to a seller, we try to book the appointment, which we're usually successful doing. And then we send them 2 emails. We send them a seller welcome email that talks about us and talks about our process. And then we send them what we call a rough CMA and market statistics email. It's all information we're going to go over in person, but you have to do the work anyways. And so you have this email that you send them, right? Buyer processes. If you do predominantly buyer business, you know that whenever you first talk with a buyer, you're going to set searches up for them. If you're not doing that, like, you start doing that, right? Like, that's important. But you probably have an email that you send them that kind of, you probably introduce them to lenders, right? There's an email template, write that. Yep. And then, you probably know, like, I should follow up with this person a day or two after I send their searches. There's your process, man. Write it all down. After you go under contract, pretty certain that everybody helps them schedule an inspection. So at what point do you do that, right? And you document it. And as a team leader or a broker owner, you can make the assumption that everybody knows this stuff, and you're going to be wrong, right? You have to put this stuff together. You have to provide it to your folks. And more than likely, if you have a very successful process that you've documented, if you hand it to somebody and say, look at all this, do you do all of these things? They probably don't do every single thing. Okay, cool. You don't do every single thing here. Start doing every single thing, and you're getting some results.
Right. So. Yeah. And again, to your point, I think something occurred to me when you said that. If you're either a solo now or small and you don't have some of these things, I think you and I have talked about this before, like, you're actually in a better position than anybody.
Right.
Because you can actually sit down and be like, how do I want to do this before I grow, before I add a buyer's agent, before I bring on a listing specialist? So you do at least have, even again, if it's so simple to say, just like, send CMA one day before, send reminder email along with that, send a follow-up, bomb. Hey, it was nice to meet you guys today. Like,
right.
It doesn't have to be a super robust, did you think about these people today? It just has to be like the basics, because again, they probably are already doing it. And look, the easiest way is walk around, get you a notebook and write it down while you're doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Save the information. Don't forget it. Like, human memory is not great. Right. Like, but if you, I think you and I both email ourselves notes. What I mean is, like, I email to myself, like, here's a note I need to not forget. And that's also not a great, there's all kinds of note apps we can use or whatnot, but that's just what I use and it works. To speak to how difficult it is to, like, wheel things back and have existing agents do new, use new processes. It's very hard, right? But there's a huge payoff there. We spent literally a year resetting agent expectations to doing things this one way. And I'll give you an example. So Follow Up Boss has phenomenal tools in the way of accountability, because you have the dialer and you have the text messaging, right? And it also pulls in all the emails people are sending. So our first problem was we didn't require agents to use the dialer and the text message app whenever they would do initial outreach, right? Once somebody's met with, like, when somebody has talked with an agent, with a client, and they've set searches up and whatnot, like, we really don't care how they communicate with them. That's natural. It's going back and forth. But whenever you have new leads that are inbound, you want to make sure that those are being followed up with appropriately. And so we have a really simple system for it, right? You would agree that you never know what somebody's preferred method of communication is. Do they like to talk? Do they like to text? Or do they like to email? I'm a weirdo, and you will always be able to reach me the fastest if you email me. Calling me or texting me, I don't monitor it that much. A lot of people like to text or call. So what we always say is, if there's a phone number, we have a system called call, text, email, right? Super simple. There's a phone number, you call them first. If they don't answer the phone, you send them a text message asking when they would like to communicate and if they'd prefer a call or an email. And then you send them an email that says the exact same thing. Right. So you just hit all the three major types of communication, and it would floor you how many agents don't do that. And I could almost argue that none of our agents were doing that whenever we started monitoring.
Right.
And there are things like, this isn't an indictment on any habits people have. Younger folks usually text first. They just do. Right. Older folks will usually send an email or make a phone call, but people generally don't like to make phone calls because it's more of a time commitment. But you're in sales, man. You got to get these folks on the phone. So anyways, I'm being long-winded, but the first thing we had to do was get everybody on board with using these systems. And then we started monitoring, and we saw, like, they're not following call, text, email. And so you just go in and you coach and you say, look, you kind of have to do this. Like, this is not, we don't micromanage much, but we micromanage, like, things that are going to make you successful. And you have to follow this this one system that we have. Anyways, I'm being long-winded about this one thing, right? But the reason why is it's highly impactful, and it's a very, very common mistake that a lot of agents make. And you will never know if they're making that mistake unless you have set the expectation that you have to use this one tool in order to get leads, right? That's always like that's always the incentive, is like, you're going to get leads if you follow these processes,
right?
You don't. So,
well, and the thing is, you see it work. Like, everybody thinks, I don't want to say they think they know better, because it's not that, but, I can certainly see pushback on that. Oh, I have to call, text, and email them, or I have to do it in this order. Like, why? But then when you do it for a month and you're like, oh my goodness, I got 5 people that wanted to talk to me. Like,
I mean, me personally, like, I'm a big weirdo and I hate talking on the phone. Just hate it. Right.
Yeah.
With people I don't know. Like, people I know, like, I'd much rather talk than email or text and get more done. But yeah, so, I mean, I lived it. Whenever I was a producing agent, I saw, like, if I emailed or texted these folks, like, sometimes they'd respond, sometimes they wouldn't. If somebody fills out a web form, or if they call in, especially, they just called in, they were on the phone. They want to talk, they want to talk to you. Right. And you'll see things like, they'll call in, the call will be missed, so it rolls to the receptionist, which is another system, by the way. Like, you got to have your inbound calling system down. Rolls to the receptionist fills out the intake form. This person was just on the phone, and then an agent will text them and say, hey, would you like to talk? Of course they want to talk. They're just on the phone. Yeah. But you have to have, the first thing you have to have is the system set up whereby you can monitor what they're doing, and not sit here and plug Follow Up Boss the whole time. I'm not an employee there or anything like that, but it happens to be, like, literally the best CRM you can use in real estate. And I don't know another one that gives you that kind of insight. And your conversion is going to go through the roof. Like, whenever you start asking your agents to do this stuff, it just does. Anyways, that's all.
Yeah. No, and back to that point, though, I mean, just to keep it super simple for the agents, right? Like, I will literally never forget that. Call, text, email. Like, I will, next time we talk, I'll be like, oh yeah, the call, text, email thing, because it's indisputable what that means.
Right.
You did it or you did not do it. There's not a lot of gray area there.
And by the way, it becomes a habit. So that's where you're helping them build this habit. And then guess what? I'm not going to annoy you anymore. The sales manager's not going to annoy you anymore. You have this habit built in, and it's good. And you're going to close more stuff. And the win for the brokerage is that our conversion goes up. So, our return on investment goes up. The win for the agent is they don't have to take as many leads. They're either going to close a hell of a lot more and make more money, or they can do less work in order to make, the same amount of money. So there's no downside, zero downside to getting folks to help them convert more. So,
no, exactly. And that's why your numbers are trending up. And that's why recruiting, I don't want to say it becomes easier. I don't want to say it's easy, but when you're on that trajectory, it is a lot easier, more interesting.
The easiest way to sell anybody on anything is to show them that you have experience doing it.
Right.
And so whenever we were newer, gosh, man, it was super hard to recruit because, I mean, you only had a couple of examples, right? And then, and you talk to these agents, they're naturally skeptical. But then after you've shown them, like, oh, wow, we have, 20 examples of folks who come in and follow this stuff, and their numbers go up. Yes, it absolutely becomes easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love where you are in that cycle, and appreciate you sharing all that. Is there anything else you want to kind of, before we wrap it, just kind of add to with that, or?
Not really. I mean, I feel like we just sort of scratched the surface on, everybody wants to, know what, like, Eric, what specific systems are you using, or what specific lead sources, things like that. And my answer is always like, hey, I'll show you my systems. I don't want to spend really any time on a podcast wasting people's time doing so, because your systems are going to be different. They're going to be specific to your business, to your lead sources, and to your market. So you can certainly find a good framework of what things need to look like. And if anybody wants to shoot me an email, I'd be happy to, hopefully point you in the right direction. But you've got to put in the work. Like, that's your, as a business owner, that is your job. You will see gains when you do it. But put in the work, right? And you'll see it, and you'll see the same idea as, it's very, very easy to understand that if you take emails you're sending constantly and you create a template, that it saves you a ton of time. When you build these systems, it's going to take you a lot of time, but think about all the time you're saving in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years out,
that's exactly right. And I love that. And I'm aware how hard that is for people, especially if they're still in production, but it's it's so worth doing because it really is. It really does pay dividends. It's a compounding effect.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Awesome. Perfect. Do you want to leave your email real quick if people want to reach out to you? I can drop it in the recording too, but if you want to mention
you can always Google me to find me. That's super easy. It's my email is eric@bramlett.me. So eric@bramlett.me.
Perfect. That's awesome. All right. Thanks, man. I really enjoyed it as always, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it.